Well, today our topic for discussion is implementing the modern public relations and constituent engagement tools to help you better leverage your GIS investment. I'm Brent Jones. I'm part of the Land Records team, and I'll be your host. Leading the presentation today with us is Ryan Selman. He's a key solution engineer on the Land Records team. If at any time during today's webinar you have a question, feel free to submit it through the GoToWebinar window. We'll try our best to address your questions during and at the end of the presentation. I'll be pasting relevant links into the window throughout the presentation. Ryan will be referencing a few things, and I'll be pasting in some links. Here's a quick look at the agenda for today's webinar. I'll begin with a quick overview of the ArcGIS solution for assessment, tax, and land records, and then Ryan will dig into the details of the public relations and constituent engagement solution and discuss how to deploy it. ArcGIS has many capabilities, from spatial analysis, advanced cartography, data sharing, publication, web mapping, app deployment, and many more. To put these capabilities into specific context for your work, we've configured valuable apps and maps that are relevant and useful to you. Our goal is to get you started and have you learn how to configure your own apps and your own look and feel. We've focused on 4 key areas in the assessor's office where GIS has great impact: public relations and constituent engagement, value analysis, field operations, and parcel management. Today, this is the last seminar in our series this year. We're discussing how to improve your engagement with the public. Engaging your constituents today is more than pushing data out through a website. It's answering their questions, providing relevant and current information the way they're accustomed to getting data today, like on their phones. It's also a two-way conversation, and you have the ability to better understand what information your taxpayers want, what they need, and what they're expecting. ArcGIS helps you manage your field operations better, map parcels more efficiently, improve your modeling to deliver better analysis values, visualize your results to uncover trends, patterns, and data inconsistencies to be sure the information you deliver to the public is as accurate and complete as possible, improving the public's trust and confidence in your office. Engaging the public is the realization of all your work. It's the part of your office you want to do the best you can. ArcGIS helps you do your work better. One thing I'd like to mention before passing this over to Ryan is to please join our meetups. We have one for land records and one for assessors and GIS. The land records meetup focuses on parcels and recorder integration. The assessor and GIS meetup focuses on spatial analysis, dashboards, insights, mapping, and visualization for assessors. Our next meetup is November 15th, preparing your data for migration to the parcel fabric. Please sign up even if you can't attend. We're recording these and we'll push these out if you're interested. Okay, now over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, Brent. Just want to make sure that everybody can see my screen.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Brent. Hey, everyone. Yeah, just to kind of put a pin before I get into talking a little bit more about the solutions and ultimately our public relations sort of solution under tax and assessment. I did just want to level set a little bit more just to put a pin in what Brent had mentioned and talk just again a little bit about our land record solution. Right, there's 4 real pegs to this, like Brent had mentioned. So data management, so there's a series of maps and apps all around parcel editing and map production, address management, things of the like, field mobility, using things like workforce for ArcGIS to navigate around your community, do work, record that work with collector, survey 123, things like that. And then there's obviously operational insights too. That's another peg of the solution. But really, obviously, kind of what we're focusing on today is really that public engagement. How do I reach my community? How do I tell my story around tax and assessment in my community? So that's where I'll obviously drill into a little bit more today. And so really what I want to hit on first before I actually talk about the individual solutions that sort of make up our public engagement offering is really this new pattern of kind of providing this information out to your constituents, using things like open data and open data pages that ship with ArcGIS to configure really destinations or one-stop shopping areas where you can get all of the information that you need around land records, taxation, and assessment in your community. So we'll get into some really good examples, some inspirational examples around what this might look like. But really, I wanted to kind of lead with this new pattern, new paradigm of how our customers are starting to deliver this information to their constituents. So really just a little bit more around open data in itself, and I won't spend too much time around this, but I just want to level set again with open data. You know, the historic sharing practices of data and really information products in this space has been all around an FTP site, right? Physical media, static snapshots over time. You know, I used to work for a county in Ohio, and we used to maintain an FTP site where we'd ship out updates to our data sets, our parcel data sets, street center lines, things of the like, every quarter, every year, what have you, right? So it was kind of a manual process to produce that data, cumbersome, and just really not ideal. And oftentimes with this historic sort of sharing practices, the data was typically, you know, had these terms of use on them. Oftentimes they were used by academic institutions or neighboring governments for analysis. And in some cases, this data was aggregated up to commercial data sets, certainly with parcels. You all may have seen that before. But really, in this old paradigm, right, the mindset was to kind of sell data. Where really the modern expectations of sharing information out, open data now is not a buzzword anymore. It's an everyday thing, right? It really has been an international movement to provide transparency throughout government entities. It's a formalized process in most cases to license and share that data out to the public. It's oftentimes been supported by governing legislation. And the most important, I think, from my perspective, aspect of this and how we deliver open data in ArcGIS is it's all data types, right? Yes, we are a spatial company, but our open data solution often, it does provide the ability to share out non-spatial data too. So things like business tables, tabular tables, or tables from CAMA systems, right? You can share those out. And the goal of our open data solution is really to be connected to your enterprise architecture. So you shouldn't have to move your data into another system to share it out into open data. It should just kind of sit right next to you know, where your business systems actually already live. So there's minimal impact on the information workers that are actually using or providing that open data out. So how does this fit into ArcGIS? ArcGIS Open Data has been in the platform for several years. And so if you own ArcGIS Online right now, if you have an organizational account, you have open data right now. So it sits on top of ArcGIS Online as powered by services and online content that you provision through ArcGIS Online, through groups. And that data is made available for download in a web application in open data sites. And I'll get into that here in a little bit. So ArcGIS truly is an open data, a complete open data solution. We give you the ability to build a site that represents your organization to the public. This can be general or focused on specific issues. So in this case, in today's presentation, I'll talk about a very focused example of open data, a destination site built on our open data solution that provides links to various applications, focused information all around assessment and taxation in communities. So we'll get into that. So with these open data sites, we give our users the ability to share out that information and automatically convert that data for download, regardless of its source, into open file formats. And again, like I mentioned before, we support operational tables as well as spatial data. You can apply your terms of use to the license of this data sets. And then more importantly, you can add context to your data sets with applications. Oftentimes, putting open data out there for the sake of open data isn't enough. Leading with an application to sort of tell your story with that data set is often a much more powerful way to present that information out, right? And so really a little bit more on this. In the past, departments have worked in silos. Open data has broken down those barriers, and it has also allowed and empowered commercial developers, journalists, expert citizens, people of the like to use this data for their use. But really over time, we've started to realize, like, how do we reach the rest of our community, right? Open data is great, but how can, no offense to my mom, how can my mom, she doesn't really know what a CSV file is, right? Or a JSON file. What do I do with this, right? So really, how do we reach to the rest of your community, tell your story with open data? And really in ArcGIS, we're doing that with open data sites and really destination pages. And the example that I'll talk about today is all around this equitable property value destination page that we've configured as an inspirational example. I'll show that here in a sec. So really, what this does is it's a platform. This open data concept is really a platform for community engagement. It bridges the gap between, on the right-hand side here, your content inside of your WebGIS, whether that WebGIS is in the cloud with ArcGIS Online or on-premise with ArcGIS Enterprise. We make that content available to the public, to your community through these open data sites that you see here in the center. So again, it bridges the gap between your main city or county website and then the content that you have in your WebGIS. And what's important about this page too is you see that we've matched the branding with these sites to basically look and feel just like the main city website in this case. So the idea is you shouldn't feel like you're leaving the city's website when you go to an ArcGIS open data destination page. You've got the ability to brand it and make it look and feel just like you're in that same experience, which is important. So let's bounce out and I'll show you an inspirational example of what this might look like. So I'll quit sharing my PowerPoint screen and I'll bounce back over and bring up this site here. So again, this is an example of an open data configuration. And again, this has all been drilled up and configured to tell the story about taxation and assessment in a community. So we lead in this page with sort of a kind of a statement talking about what the purpose is of this group, right? So local property taxes help fund local programs such as public schools, fire and law enforcement, et cetera. So there's kind of that mission statement that leads at the top of this page. Moving down, we've got a couple key statistics for this community that oftentimes folks are asking about. How many parcels are in my community? How many single family homes are out there? What's the total market value of all these properties, right? Things of the like. So what's important about these key statistics is we can wire these up directly against your data sets. So as they change live, those numbers are reflective on this front page website right here. Moving down on the page, there's a section around how does it work? So oftentimes, you know, in the work that we've done, assessors and auditors across the country, one of their, you know, they get asked questions all the time. Well, why is my property tax going up? Or questions of the like, right? So this sort of section right here in the page gives you the ability to kind of link out to other applications or pages that helps tell the story about, hey, how does property valuation work? How does assessed value and tax work in my community, right? What if I disagree with my property tax? Where do I go? So the idea is this is kind of a one-stop section where you can explain and kind of articulate to the community how this process works. What's the work that you're doing on the back end? And really what we're doing here with this open data site, yes, we are ultimately going to talk about how we can download this data, but really what you're doing in this section is you're building trust with your community. You're telling the story around how you're doing this on the back end, how the sausage is made, so to speak, and ultimately, again, building that trust with your constituents. So moving on, this section is all around, okay, I'm buying a property. Maybe my sale price is $200,000 or anticipated, maybe $300,000. What is my estimated tax burden going to be? Estimated again, right? So we're just doing a quick configuration or a calculation here of that estimated sale price or that market value, and then the estimated assessed value, and then configuring out or figuring out what that estimated tax might be per year. And again, this is just an estimate, but it's kind of interesting to provide this out to your constituents for prospective home buyers to get a feel for what that tax liability might be. Just a simple tax liability calculator embedded in the site. So then I'll move on down into this section of the page where we start to drill into specific information products supporting this mission. So embedded in this site directly is a simple, it's basically a parcel viewer that allows the user, instead of bouncing out to another website, to just inside of this same experience, search for a parcel. So I'll quickly search for a parcel by number, drill into that parcel. The map should zoom to that, but then it's going to give me basic information about that parcel, right? So some specific attributes about that parcel, as well as the tax distribution. So for that property, where the tax is actually going. So in this case, most of them are going to the school districts, right? Grade school, high school. But then where else is my tax dollars going, right? So it's a simple breakdown there. So it's kind of an interesting kind of way to introduce sort of that parcel viewer experience directly inside of an open data page like this. And then moving on, underneath that embedded application are some links out to some of these other applications. So I'm not going to open these up right now because I've got a section of my presentation that I'm going to drill into these specifically later on. But just understand that this entire section of this page is all around those information products in support of that mission. So there's a link to our tax parcel viewer, our residential comp finder, my tax distribution, and then a floodplain inquiry application that I'll show here in a second. Okay, so moving on in the page is now we're drilling, okay, we've told our story about how assessment and taxation is done and computed in the community. We've got information products out there that is that's helping support this mission, but maybe I just want that raw parcel data. Maybe I want to download information about property values or foreclosures. So this section is kind of where you access that data from. We've split it out into specific categories. So in this case, if I click on this link, it's going to go and for that category, query any data set that's been shared up through open data through ArcGIS that comes back with the term parcels in it. So in this case, I can drill into tax parcels. And now I can get a feel for, this is where I can go ahead and download this data set if I wanted to. Before I go and download that data set, what's interesting in our open data solution here is I can actually get a feel for the type of data that I'm ultimately going to get when I download this data set. So I see just a basic inset map here of the geometry of the parcels that I'm going to ultimately download here. I can see down here the attributes that are associated with this data set. And what's interesting about this is I can start to visualize, do a little bit of data visualization directly in this open data page right here. So I can click on current taxable value, and it's going to provide a simple chart showing that information, but then it's also going to symbolize all of those parcels based on that value that I clicked, that attribute field that I just clicked on, right? So you can start to explore and navigate this data set before you even download it. So I'll turn that off. The other thing, if I click on this data tab, oftentimes in open data sites, you download a data set, and if it's a bigger community or county, you're staring at maybe 400,000 records worth of parcel data, and you're squinting at this Excel spreadsheet. Well, what did I just download? I don't even know what I have right here. So before actually downloading that data set, you've got the ability in this data tab to actually get a feel for what you're going to get. The fields there, I can scroll through and see the type of data that I'm going to end up downloading, things of the like. Okay. So let's say I'm ready to download this entire data set, right? All of the parcels, in this case, in the city of Naperville. I simply go up to the download, the dropdown, and then click full data set, right? So I have the option to download this in CSV format, KML, or a shapefile. So that, again, is going to give me the entire data set. But what's interesting, and you saw the filter data set, so maybe I'm only interested in a specific neighborhood, or maybe this bounding box that we're looking at inside of this map, maybe I only want those parcels. We give you the ability to kind of dynamically say, okay, within this spatial extent, give me just those parcels. And that's what you're seeing right here. Moreover, I can do attribute queries on this data set before I go ahead and download the data to maybe drill into, let's go find another example here. Maybe I'm only interested in the parcels with building area. I'll click on this little query button, building area between 0 and maybe I'll just type in a value, maybe 2000. Enter. So that just filtered down the entire data set to only those that have satisfied that query. And now when I go download filtered data set, I'm going to get just those resulting features from that data set. So you can really hone in on the data that you're actually interested in. Okay, so that's downloading data. I'm going to bounce back and go back to the main page that we've been drilling into. And to kind of round out the page, we've also included a property tax calendar, again, helping tell the story about, that process over the given year. So this is for public consumption. This is telling that story about, hey, these are the key dates for the assessor throughout the tax year, the tax calendar year. So on January 31st, taxes are due to local taxing districts. So things of the like, right? So whatever those important dates are that you all have in your communities, the idea is to kind of portray that here in a simple chart showing that calendar of key dates for the public to keep their eye on. And then finally, what if I don't agree with my property value? How do I kick off that process? There's links down here to a configuration of ArcGIS called Property Assessment Appeal, which again, I'll show here in a second. It's a focused application, but again, just understand that that's a part of this site at the bottom of the page to kind of kick off that assessment appeal process here. And I'll show what that looks like again here in a second. Okay. So that rounds out the site, the open data site that I wanted to show. Again, this is an inspirational example that communities can use, again, to provide that one-stop sort of shopping, that destination where you can access all of this different information around assessment and taxation. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that, and I'm going to bounce back into slides, and we'll see if I can do this. I'm assuming everybody can see my slides again, so I'm going to keep going.
Yep, no problem. Looks good.
Perfect, Brent. Thanks. So I mentioned and I talked about a handful of focused applications on that page, right? And so now I want to kind of pivot this conversation a little bit and talk about, what those applications are, where we can find them in Esri site, how do I deploy them, things like that. But again, I really want to kind of stress that concept of leading with that open data page, that destination, as sort of that bucket, that one-stop shop for these focused applications that are in support of that mission. So these focus applications, again, have been, they're a part of our ArcGIS for state and local government solution. So for those that aren't familiar with this solution, we've got a solution team that focuses on configurations of ArcGIS for, again, state and local governments. So these are a series of useful maps and apps focused on government work. They are built on and just extend the core platform. So if you have ArcGIS Online, they work against ArcGIS Online, or if you have ArcGIS Enterprise running on premise, they work against that installation as well. And really what they do is they kind of streamline your work and get you started by deploying just an out-of-the-box COTS configurable piece of technology focused on a specific workflow. They're configurable and extensible, so we give you the solution as it is, but there's no reason why you can't add a handful of fields or maybe add a widget to an application and really make it your own. We give you that ability as well. They're freely available and they're fully supported. So if you have issues standing them up, or if something breaks, or if something's not working correctly, you can always call tech support and we'll support that. So they're fully supported products that ship with ArcGIS. And really, this is kind of the important part, I think. So they're built on a community of users, right? So we don't, we don't build these and we don't just guess at what these applications are going to look like, right? We are working, our solutions team works side by side with local government entities all across the nation, understanding requirements, figuring out what those requirements might look like as far as solutions in ArcGIS, and then ultimately building them out, right? So it is a participatory sport. You can help us kind of drive the way these the solutions are actually moving. And then, of course, they're supported by a network of Esri services and partner offerings. So in the event, maybe you've got too much going on, or you can leverage Esri services or one of our partners to actually stand and configure one of these or a set of these solution offerings up. So helps users implement, sustain. So ultimately what these do and what the mission of the solutions team is to deliver maps and apps quickly throughout the organization, right? The old days of standing up a big parcel viewer or maybe a big application like the Uber app, right? I mean, that was a workflow that was required because in the old days, right, it was hard to build those applications. It was cumbersome to build an app. So you had one shot at it, right? You know, if it's an 8-month development cycle, we better pour everything into this application because we're not going to get a chance at it anymore. That paradigm shift now with ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise and really the work of this solutions team, right? So these are just out of the box configurations of ArcGIS that you can quickly deploy throughout the organization. They also help you stay current with your future releases of ArcGIS and avoid legacy technology. So they're supported with newer releases of ArcGIS. The solutions team keeps up with those releases, and then the solutions are ultimately, reflected of those updates as well. And really, it unlocks geospatial this platform, ArcGIS platform, to the masses, right, in your organization. I mentioned this before. Again, we're leveraging the collective knowledge of the entire community. So again, we are building these side by side with users out in the community every day. And so really to do this, the goal around this is you can still deploy information products that are effective and valuable with less staff budget and really minimal technical expertise in some cases, okay? So how do I find these? I'll show where this is, where we can get to these solutions in a second, but solutions.arcgis.com. So that's where you can kind of go and browse these solutions and get a feel for what's out there. There's a series of, we call it try it live links, where you can actually poke at an application and get a feel for how it behaves, what it looks like, and what you ultimately get with that solution. In terms of land records maps and apps, and I'll show how to get to this as well, there's a gallery in the solutions page that you can filter all of our local government solutions down to just those under land records, right? And then further filter those down to just those land record solutions that deal with community engagement. So it's a really nice experience in how you can discover these solutions out on that page. In terms of constituent engagement, and I'll end up showing a handful of these, and I've already mentioned those, a couple of these that were hanging off of that open data site that I showed earlier. But in terms of constituent engagement, there's the tax parcel viewer, my tax distribution, which allows you to, again, see where your tax dollars are going, a residential comp finder to understand, comparable sales that have occurred in your neighborhood, a floodplain inquiry application, right? Public notification. So how do I, take a parcel, do a buffer around a parcel and get mailing labels for those folks that are actually intersecting of that 300-foot, in this case, buffer, right? And I'll show all these applications here in a second. There's a school locator application as well. So understanding, I'm a prospective home buyer. I want to buy a property in this neighborhood. Where are my kids going to go to school? So there's a simple configuration that allows for that workflow as well. And again, all of these are just built on core pieces of technology that ship with ArcGIS. And again, this isn't new technology, it's just configurations of that core ArcGIS platform that you're used to. There's another configuration called tax reverted property. I included this under the constituent engagement because oftentimes to get delinquent properties back on that tax roll, oftentimes folks will post maybe in a newspaper, there's a sheriff sale list, but there's really not a mapping component to that. How do I understand where these prospective properties are? So there's an application that you could share out to your constituents to show that information. But I included that here. It's really a 3-application solution offering. There's a field aspect, there's a dashboard aspect for back-end monitoring of that operation in real time, but the public-facing part of it is that tax sale application showing where these sheriff properties might be for sale. And then there's some crowdsourcing applications that ship with our community engagement solution. So I mentioned that property tax assessment appeal app, right? So it's built on Survey 123, which is a survey builder piece of technology that ships with ArcGIS. That property tax assessment appeal application is really not a replacement to that full-blown process that you folks probably go through. It's really meant to just kind of kickstart that process and provide an easy access point to actually insert that information and kickstart the process off of in this case assessment appeal. And then there's a configuration called photo survey that helps with blight remediation, and it allows communities to go take street level imagery and pair that imagery out down to parcel polygons. So in some cases you might have a handful of images per a parcel, and then you can crowdsource that information out to the public or maybe folks in your department and have them fill out a survey for each parcel by looking at all of those property photos and you're asking questions around, well, is there boarded up windows, or is there tall weeds or grass, or is there damage to the roof, right? So you're having folks actually fill out a survey against the property photos that you go out and take for a particular parcel. So that's what photo survey is all about. Some cases, folks again are doing that that work in-house, but in some cases, folks are actually crowdsourcing that effort out to the masses, to the public, which is interesting. And then finally, to round out our crowdsourcing efforts, there is an address crowdsourcing configuration built on GeoForm, and that allows you to kind of request an address in your community and kind of get that process kickstarted as well. So quite a few applications that round out these constituent engagement maps and apps. And again, I'll drill into these here in a second through a series of demos, but that kind of rounds out that handful of maps and apps. Okay, so let's bounce out. I'm going to quit sharing my PowerPoint slides. I'll end my show and actually show you where to find these applications and ultimately, what they might look like. So I mentioned early on in those slides, the ArcGIS solutions page, again, solutions.arcgis.com. Where you'll want to navigate is if you scroll down just a touch and go to ArcGIS Solutions for Local Government, drill into land records. And there's a whole series of applications, again, that kind of feed into different sort of aspects of the operation, right? For data management, for operational awareness, things of the like, right? But in terms of what we're talking about today, engaging the public, if I click on Learn More under Engage the Public, you'll find all of those applications that I've been talking about in the previous slides here. So tax parcel viewer, locate schools, the sales comp application, everything else, it's all out here. Again, I mentioned you can try it live by clicking View Application in most cases, but what you'll want to do is click Learn More and actually get a feel for what you're going to get with this application. There's typically a brief overview, some requirements as far as software, what you might need for this application to run in your infrastructure or in your deployment of ArcGIS, ultimately what you get, and there's a Get Started tab too to kind of walk you through standing this up. Talk about this in a little bit more detail later on, but just kind of wanted to show you, for each of these solutions, there's more information about each solution before you go ahead and actually deploy them in your organization. Okay, so to drill into some of these maps and apps, actually before I do that, another way to discover these solutions is to go back to that solutions page and go to the gallery. And again, these are all of our solutions for all industries. So what we're going to do in this case is drill into local government on the left-hand side, and then land records. So these are all of our land record solutions. And then I'll scroll down here for implementation patterns. We'll drill into community engagement for those maps and apps that are all around community engagement. So just another way to access those solution configurations here. But okay, in terms of accessing them and showing them, again, I want to kind of access those maps and apps off of my main destination page that I've been talking about in the presentation. So I'll scroll down to my apps section. And the first one that I'm going to show is that tax parcel viewer, again, under that apps section. So tax parcel viewer is a simple, very straightforward, focused application that allows users anywhere at any time to access parcel information. So what I can do in this app, I can search for an address or a parcel number, or even a subdivision or condo name. I can do a quick search there, so I'll just start typing in numbers. So you can see some suggestions there. I can drill into, maybe I'm interested in this 12 West Street. It'll zoom the map right to it, select that parcel, and then provides a handful of attributes about that parcel, right? So the subdivision, parcel number, taxing district, school district, things of the like. I can link out, and we see this, this is actually a very common practice and a lot of our users in these pop-ups is to actually link out to maybe recorded documents about that property. So if you have another business system that you can pass a parcel number or some kind of record locator into, we see a lot of folks do that from the pop-up configuration. So viewing, in this case, like I mentioned before, recorded documents for this parcel or some other business system that you might want to link out to. That's a common workflow. And that's supported right here. So more information in this case, I think this is going to link out to what's going to download a property report. So kind of similar to what I was describing before. Also in this application, we give you the ability, well, your users have the ability to kind of provide a feedback on the data and the quality of data that's shipped out through this application. So there's a simple submit feedback tool. And let's say I am the owner of this parcel and I've got an issue with something with the way it's maybe drawn, or maybe it's some attribute information about it. I can digitize where my problem is, what the problem type is. So maybe it's a characteristics issue, provide some comments, my name, phone, email, and then hit save, and ultimately kick a process up on the back end to maybe your maybe the tax mapping folks. Maybe they have this layer inside of their MXD or Pro project where they're actually editing parcels in. Maybe they have this layer added to it, and they see this as a an issue in the data live in that editing application. So they can start making changes per this feedback loop. Okay, so that's the tax parcel viewer. The other one that I wanted to show was the comp finder. So this is our sales comp finder, residential comp finder application. So the idea around this one is all around finding comparable sales in your neighborhood or in a specific boundary. So in this case, you're seeing all of the recent sales in the city of Naperville. But what I can do in this little, on the pane on the right-hand side, I can either search for a parcel, an address, or even a school district, or I can poke at the map. And at that location, it's going to throw out a buffer of, in this case, we'll bump it up to 2 miles. And so I'll set my location. It did the buffer of 2 miles, and then it's intersected all of those sales within that 2 mile radius. All of those resulting sales have been populated in this right-hand pane here, so I can drill into these sales and get a feel for what that information for that sale is all about, right? So the parcel ID, the year built, current assessed value, that sale price, when it closed, the sales ratio, and then we've got a simple little kind of a table here showing the likelihood that this sale could impact property tax levied against this property, right? The other thing that's interesting about this, I'll zoom back out, is I can filter this list down. I think I lost my geometry. We'll do another search real quick. So I can filter this down by clicking on this filter button in the bottom right-hand corner of the widget. And let's say I'm only interested in those sales that were between the sale amount of $250,000 and maybe in this case, $350, and click apply. So it filtered my list down. So maybe I want to continue this filtering by maybe that structure type is ranch. Click apply. So there's one in this case. I got lucky. So in this case, within that 2 mile buffer, I'm seeing all those sales again that are within or between 250,000 and 350,000 that are of structure type ranch, right? So you can kind of filter down these sales to get more information or more concise information for the type of sale that you're looking for. So that is the residential comp finder. The other one that I wanted to show is the floodplain inquiry application. So we've done some interesting work linking out to FEMA firm panels from this application, and I'll show that workflow here in a second. But this is just a very focused, streamlined application, all designed around figuring out if my property is in a floodplain. So I could search for an address or a place in this application, or I can zoom into my location on the map and simply poke at the map. And if my property that I selected also intersects a flood zone, it's going to provide that information for me right there. So in this case, this property is within a flood zone of X 500. The owner name, parcel number, address, the assessed value, and then again, like I mentioned, we're linking directly out to FEMA DFIRM panels for more information about that floodplain. So directly from this floodplain inquiry app, you can bounce out to those FIRM panels. So that's the floodplain inquiry. And a couple others, two more that I really wanted to hone in before I kind of pivot and start talking about how you lay these applications down, is this public notification application. Now oftentimes we see organizations stand this up for internal use. So for folks in the office that need to create mailing labels for a specific street or maybe properties within a certain buffer of a property, we're filling a void there with this application in that regard. But in some cases we see folks making this available to the public. But ultimately what the workflow is you can search for a parcel number or identify a point or a parcel on the map. So I'll just identify that one parcel there. I'll apply a search distance of 300 feet. And so that just did again, a 300-foot buffer around that point that I dropped in on the map. And now we're seeing any site addresses that have intersected that, again, that radius. So maybe we're interested in actual tax parcel owners, so data that's coming from the tax parcel layer. We can do the same thing, but in this case, we're just intersecting the parcels that, again, intersect that 300-foot buffer around that point. So the main point of this application is, again, all right, I want to kick out mailing label information for these parcels that, again, intersect that 300-foot buffer. So I can kick those out in a series of different formats. So the PDF label, maybe I'm interested in 60 per page, click download. And now I get a nice Avery mailing label list for all of those parcels that, again, intersect that 300-foot buffer. So that's the public notification configuration. The last application that I wanted to talk about, again, under this umbrella of constituent engagement, is the school locator. I mentioned this workflow before, but imagine you're a prospective home buyer and you want to understand where your kids might go to elementary school, middle school, high school, etc. So very similar to some of these other applications that I've shown already, I can either search for my address, my prospective address, or I could select on the map and say at that location, in this case, it's 1019 Lakewood Circle. I've got the attendance zones for elementary schools, middle schools, and then high schools as well. So I can drill into information about the elementary school. Your child will attend Mary Lou Collishaw Elementary School, how many students are currently enrolled there, and I can actually provide a link out to that school district's website there as well. So that same workflow is there for middle school attendance zones, as well as high school attendance zones, again, for that point that I selected on the map. Okay, so that's the school locator. Okay, so I think I've gone through enough demos. I've shown a handful of applications, but I just wanted to give you a feel for, again, where these applications might live, how you access them rather on the solutions page, right? We talked about that, and ultimately what these applications look and behave like in action, right? And again, I kept bouncing back and forth from this open data page because, again, I think this is it's an exciting paradigm to be able to kind of hang these applications off of that one destination page. In this case, this open data inspirational example. Okay, so enough of that. I'm going to bounce back one last time to slides and talk a little bit and wrap things up here about how we can get started. And I'll move through this kind of quickly because I do want to leave some time for questions. So in terms of open data, how do I get started with that? Again, that first thing that I demoed before, that open data, that destination site. How does that work, right? I mentioned that it's a part of ArcGIS Online. It is just an app that you have access to in ArcGIS Online. And basically what you do is you have your layers that ultimately you want to share out inside of your open data site, they're registered layers inside of your WebGIS, either ArcGIS Online, or they could be coming from ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Server. You register those data sets in ArcGIS Online. You'll create a group inside of your ArcGIS Online organization that is designated as an open data group. You'll share those data sets to that open data group and then point your open data site configuration to that open data group. So at that point, anything that's been shared to that open data group would then be made available on your open data site, okay? So again, we give you the ability at that point, you're going to search against some metadata that you provide in those different data sets. So things like tags are really important to think about when you register those data sets with an open data site, because that's what you're going to search against. Even the item description or the name, we're searching against those pieces of information when you do a search in the open data site. And then ultimately, we give you the ability to download in a series of open file formats as well. So again, we're seeing a lot of folks use this open data site to share out, tax parcels, like I showed earlier, sales, foreclosures, appeals, maybe tax districts, anything of the like, right? We're seeing a lot of really, really good use cases of sharing this type of information out through ArcGIS open data. And I pasted a handful of good examples, I think, in the slide here. I think we might try to drop those into the chat box, but Racine County up in Wisconsin, Franklin County here in Ohio, in the Columbus area, and Bexar County, Texas, all have really good open data sites that you might want to take a look at and see how they're configuring things. And really, again, just to hit on this theme, you're really telling your story with a page. So what I just described is how you register your data set up with that open data site. But with open data, we provide this really nice site editor that allows you to kind of drag and drop different elements of the site into this builder experience. So that inspirational example that I kept bouncing back to, I didn't code any of that. None of us did. It's all configurations, right? You're just dragging and dropping different pieces of the site into the builder experience and just building a website out. It's very much like Wix or Squarespace if you're familiar with building websites like that. It's very, very similar to those. But again, it's all around telling your story with a page, right? Providing links to information products out from that open data destination page, and then making your data available for download as well. As far as those informational products that I talked about, right, those apps that hang off of that destination page, again, that are made available from that solution site that I've been talking about, we've kind of shifted in the way we deploy those solution offerings. So again, these are the solution offerings that I mentioned: the tax parcel viewer, the public notification application, the school locator. These applications are what I'm referring to here. So in the past, it used to be you'd have to download this data model, serve up services from that data model, in some cases configure a JavaScript application on your own web server. It's kind of clunky, kind of manual. It just wasn't ideal. So we've introduced this a new deployment option, and it's an automated deployment option. It's called the Solutions Deployment Tool. It's a free ArcGIS Pro add-in that helps our users discover those solution offerings and then ultimately deploy the services, maps, and configurable apps supported in a solution. So you literally, on the right-hand side here in my slide, you'll search for, in this case, land records. You'll click on a solution, specify the output folder where this solution is going to live in your organization, and click deploy. Now this can work against ArcGIS Online, and it's supported against ArcGIS Enterprise in your own infrastructure. We don't care where it goes. It's going to work identical in both instances. So again, I hit on this before, the two different ways. So on the left-hand side, we're still describing that deployment tool option that's automated, that's streamlined, super easy to use. On the right-hand side, you still can go the manual approach and lay down your own services, build your own web maps, kind of follow our directions and build that solution out. That's still out there as well for the more traditional approaches for standing up these solution offerings. So that's still there. But we're seeing a lot of use of this deployment tool because, again, it's very streamlined. It's an easy way to discover the maps and apps. Select one, click deploy, and you're off and running. And just to kind of put a finer point on this, again, there's a 4-step process for deploying these solutions. The first one is to configure your ArcGIS organization. Again, that ArcGIS organization can live as a SaaS offering in ArcGIS Online, hosted by Esri, or it can be ArcGIS Enterprise, living in your own infrastructure. So wherever your WebGIS is, we don't care. You'll just build that organization out. Your step 2 is going to be deploy that ArcGIS solution, either the manual way, the traditional way, or with our new ArcGIS solution deployment tool. So you'll log into the ArcGIS organization, identify the configuration you're interested in, select the solutions, and then deploy the solution, right? And then from there, we give you a series of steps to kind of configure that solution out. there's opportunities here. Once the solution is laid down, I can change and modify the maps and layers underneath. I can refine layers and tables by adding fields, maybe dropping domain values, things of the like. And probably most importantly, you can brand these solutions as you want, right? So you can add your logo, you can add and match your color scheme from your existing website. You can put images on there. So you can really make these look and feel exactly how you want them. And then you load your data. So in some cases, like in the tax parcel viewer, you're gonna load your data that you might have from your tax parcel polygon. Maybe it's got CAMA attributes joined to it. You're gonna load that data into the solution, and we give you a series of tools to actually do that, that process as well. So again, just to put a finer point on this, all of these that I've demoed today, the tax parcel viewer, my tax distribution, the public notification app, all of these that I've talked through today can be laid down with that deployment tool. And to finally kind of wrap things up here, as far as, kind of taking this, your GIS data, your tax polygons in most cases, and pairing those with CAMA tables. A lot of those solutions that you saw out there are reliant on some CAMA characteristics or CAMA attributes. So we handle this by, we've got our parcel editing solution, and then you have your existing CAMA assessment and tax systems. So the way we work with this is using a process called ETLs, or extract, transform, and load, by using Python scripts to basically take attributes from CAMA and pairing those attributes with your parcel polygons and then pushing them into your WebGIS, whether it's ArcGIS Enterprise or ArcGIS Online. So there's some tools out there that we can help with, or you might be comfortable with Python scripting yourself. But that's kind of how we handle this integration between GIS and CAMA. And at that point, you're creating tax parcel geometry with those property characteristics that are coming from your CAMA system. So sales, foreclosures, appeals, assessment neighborhoods, things of the like, right? And those are then fed out for these land record services, so tax parcels, sales, foreclosures, those layers inside of the WebGIS that ultimately serve and feed those applications that we've been demoing. Okay, so just a couple other slides here about the community. This is not all about the technology. We mentioned a handful of meetups Brent mentioned early on. There's more for local government. Esri's on GitHub as well. Again, that solutions page I show up here in the top left-hand corner. There's really good resources out there in that terms. And again, the land records community, just to put a finer point on that as well, the land records meetup is out there, as well as the assessors and GIS meetup too. But I want to kind of wrap up. I think we've got about 6 minutes or so. That's pretty much it. There's a handful of links here. Again, that solutions page, some useful links, as well as some Twitter handles to follow to keep up to date on some of these solutions. So I'll leave those up there, and I guess I'll pause, Brent, and maybe ask, tee up some questions. I think we've got some time.
Yeah, nicely done, Ryan. Thanks. I've been trying to keep up with the questions, but there's a few here that would be best answered by you.
Okay.
Where can I find the website builder? Is there a link to it?
Good question. So I'm assuming the so actually we might want to get. I'm assuming the site builder for open data. I'm assuming that's what we're talking about. And to get to that, I'll bounce out again. If you go into your ArcGIS organization, you'll sign in, and this is just a demo organization here. You'll sign in and then click on the app switcher up here and then go to open data. And then this is where you'll start standing up those open data sites. You'll click on sites up here and then create a new site, or these are existing sites that already are out there. And then I can click on the site editor and start building my site out. So hopefully that answers the question. I think that's what we were referring to.
Yeah, I hope that answers your question, Heather. If not, just put something else in the chat window. Where can I find the Parcel CAMA ETL tools?
Okay, so what I was referring to, I don't have it up right now. There's a couple different ways that you can do that. inside of the deployment tool, the best way, well, the way that I'll talk through right now is in that deployment tool, right, that I've been talking about. You can deploy the solution, configure the solution by adding fields, but then that final step is called load data. So that is one way that you can take existing data that might be in your CAMA system or in your parcel polygon and load that data into the layers that have been laid down with the solution. That's probably the easiest way to do it. There's a handful of other ways that we could probably tackle that, but we might, maybe I'll follow up directly with that person, Brent, and talk through some options there. But that's I just wanted to present the easiest way. And again, it's a part of that deployment tool, that fourth step. It's called load data, and that allows you to append data into the solution. But I might want to follow up and see what exactly, because there's more to it, right? What CAMA system, and there's other options there too.
Yeah, are we going to have a version of this public engagement site available for the public to view? Because I don't think it's public now.
Yeah, it's not public just yet. It's, it is an inspirational example. It's kind of a work in progress. I think ultimately that's the goal, is to get this out there for the public to see. But I don't know exactly when. But I assume the solutions team is going to want to share this out and socialize it with the community. So I don't know if that answers the question. I think it's coming, yeah.
Yeah, I know, and I know we're soliciting a lot of feedback at the moment.
Yep.
Okay, so this, I don't know if you have the question panel open, but this is a long one, and I'll read it. So if you can, I'm deploying and configuring ArcGIS Enterprise 10.6.1 server, data store, portal, web adapters, and Enterprise Geodatabase 10.6.1. I have a question regarding GIS and CAMA integration. Should Enterprise Geodatabase for ArcGIS Server and Data Store be inside CAMA? Can you give me some details regarding GIS and CAMA integration?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So I think I think they can, in most cases, in most implementations, what we see are they kind of live separately. So you've got your Enterprise Geodatabase where you're probably maintaining and editing parcel polygons, parcel lines, things of the like, and then you've got a CAMA system that's separate. So I wouldn't say that the data store or the enterprise geodatabase should live inside of CAMA, but I think they should sit next to each other, and then using some sort of scripting, again, using that load data tool. There's a data assistant tool that we ship. There's several ways to kind of join and pair those CAMA attributes based on parcel ID or some kind of identifier to a parcel polygon and load them into the solution. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, those data sources, the ArcGIS data store and the enterprise geodatabase, in most cases do not live within CAMA. They're two separate systems that we can script and kind of merge those two data sets together. I don't know if that helps, but we can follow up again if that didn't answer the question.
All right, Ryan. I think that answers that question. All right. Yep, okay. We've got to thank. Top of the hour. We have one more here. Is the data assistant tool continuously updated, continue to be improved?
So it is, yeah. So again, the data assistant tool is now it's a pro download. So it's an add-in just like the solutions deployment tool. And it is, yes, it's being actively maintained, developed upon, and it shows up just like a tab in the main ribbon in ArcGIS Pro now. So yeah, that's continuously getting work, that data assistant tool. Yep.
Okay, I think that's going to do it. We're right at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for attending and listening. We will share this recording out, and I want to particularly thank Ryan for putting this presentation together. Thank you. Yep, I really appreciate it. All right, everyone, have a good day.